she invites you to all sit at the table around the schematics that are splayed out.
Yep. And Tessian will mention, he's like, I feel, we've mentioned this to the Crusaders, but we've been running into groups that have been trafficking in slaves. That's why a few of us are even here, as Tessian looks to Karash. But given that he's trying to duplicate the mana cannon, we suspect that this slave ring that's operating in the eastern side of Aramea might be connected to these weapons in his attempts to weaponize more mana cannons.
Using the slaves to build the cannons and then using them for fodder. It's a brilliant move if it wasn't so sick.
She again just kind of shakes her head. She says, it makes almost too much sense. It's a way to have easy labor constructed and then remove anybody who would ask questions. It's very like him. It's a fair question of why he is able to continue doing what he does, but the answer is not a simple one. My sister is aware of at least some of his activities, but as you probably know, getting something that was damning was more difficult. It's not hard to know that Faust Dryden has always had his own set of ambitions and goals, and that he was willing to do whatever he saw necessary to complete them, but he runs a good city. His populace are pleased with him overall. The city is one of the most profitable in the whole continent. And as such, it's difficult to remove a man like that from power without something else to incriminate him in the process.
Now we have that something else.
She nods. She says, this is a big step. But even so, it's not that simple. The Alabaster Cabal is meant to protect the Empress, but it's also meant as something of a shield. They monitor her. It's under the pretense of keeping her safe, and that's an easy excuse to sell. If they're there when she's going anywhere, they can always protect her if something were to happen, right? But it also means that there are very few times where she can do something without them knowing. And not all of them have her best interests in mind. I hesitate to understand the breadth to which their influence spreads across the continent, but they too are powerful. Several of them gifted with advanced level magics. It would not be hard for me to believe that some of them also had their tendrils in whatever Faust Dryden was doing. It's part of why this level of secrecy was necessary, because quite frankly, I think I would distrust more of them than I would trust. It's also why it's difficult for her It's also why it's difficult for the Empress to make a move in the open, because everything that she does is likely to reach his ears before she could even implement it to its fullest. Now, she has been in contact with the leader of the Crusaders, so I had heard some about the slaving operations, and to be honest, if I could speak for my sister, she's been frustrated with the eastern side of the continent for some time now, a more lawless region with several rulers that we think are not fit to rule their areas, but again, the upheaval process requires approval of a number of people beyond just the Empress. Yes, she has the final say on things, but her hands are somewhat tied when it comes to making decisions that would involve taking over a region and handing it to new leadership. So I find myself, and she has been quite frustrated as well with what's been happening, but... And she kind of looks at Cass. There's like this pregnant pause. She looks over at Cass and she's like, I hope you're right about trusting them, but I trust you, Cass. She says, I have long suspected that our mother was put down for trying to shake up the status quo. That this illness that she died of was not a natural one, but one forced upon her years ago to put someone else in power, someone they felt was more controllable. I think they underestimated the scope of my sister's magical abilities. But even so, because she's more new and inexperienced, I think they find her as someone they can manipulate, or at the very least, someone who's less willing to take a stand, because she doesn't know whom she can and cannot trust.
So, and I'm going to say this, so like, is this this cabal, is it like, so you have like the Queen's Guard, and then you have like the military, right? Or are they the entire force? How does this work?
It is specifically the Queen's Guard that operates pretty much within the castle unless the Empress leaves the castle.
Okay. There is a military, right?
There is a military made up of the Crimson Reserve as well as some other folks, either first like mercenaries and the like, that would comprise an actual standing military force. Not to mention they could call on any other city's force if they needed to, which
So
is part
that's
of what
all
happened.
yeah. So further, at least, so I said, all right, understood about the Cabal, but this is evidence. Call the military. Call them on the phone. Gather the military, and we march. We remove him from power. It can't be that complicated. This must be the greatest military might in all of Aramea. Call in your allies, and let's snuff this out.
She says, I think you underestimate the power of the Cabal. One Cabal person could lay waste to 1,000 soldiers with impunity. It is not as simple as raising a militia to take out a man with great magical abilities. Not to mention, from what I understand, though it's been difficult to find this out for certain, I'm afraid Faust Dryden has the ability to manipulate people's memories, their minds, the scope of which he can control regular folks who happen to have a weapon in their hands frightens me. If it was as simple as just making an act of aggression towards him, we would have done that a long time ago.
I mean, there must be something you have. Otherwise, he would have made a move against you more directly. There is a reason he's staying his hand. Can't we exploit that?
Potentially, but we know not what that reason is. I don't know if he's biding his time, or if he has other goals in mind. It's not as though he could just come here and kill the Empress and take over himself. He would be powerful enough to potentially rule in some kind of authoritarian nature, but the rules of succession would still stand. So his means to an end I do not fully understand.
Look, I know this is frustrating for you, and I don't have the full context, but are we defending the status quo here? What's our next move?
And I think what Isaac is trying to say is, given all of the obstacles put in front of you and the evidence here, what do you feel is our best option for stopping Faust Dryden?
She kind of shakes her head. She says, this evidence does change things. It's something tangible, something big. The war of public opinion is an important one, even in a monarchy. And there are few people who are eager to duplicate what happened with the Mana Cannon before. Something of this nature means that we could move to arrest him. The Cabal will have little ground to stand on to stop us, even those members who are adamantly against us behind the scenes. We could bring him here, hold him, put him on trial, and remove him from power, but this is a road that once you start to go down, you don't stop.
But can we afford not to? If he finishes these here, are you ever going to be able to have this opportunity? Would you be able to stop him?
I don't think so. It's just, I mean, one cannot complain when having an opportunity of this nature, but I wish we had more time. I can try to pull my sister aside later today when there will be no one else around and see what she makes of all of it, but I'm loath to make any calls because it's ultimately her decision to make. That's why I cannot promise any course of action out of this, but I think, knowing her as well as I do, that she will be eager to see him pay for his crimes. I just am worried about how we keep him here and how we do so without any of his sympathizers running amok within this castle.
We have to try, right? Even if we arrest him and he finds a way out through escaping or through legalities, it delays his plans. It throws a wrench into things that maybe buys us some more time to dismantle some of his plans.
I agree. Good.
Is it worth us attempting to just stop him, to stall until a better option arrives? Should we attempt to make a strike against these projects of his? Is that another option in front of us that we should consider?
She kind of thinks about it. She says, potentially, but if we don't know where these things are, I don't know how we slow them down.
Well, we know where the ship is. And he kind of looks to the others like, that's right. Yes, we know where the ship is.
We know where they're building at least something like it.
Seems like we could always make moves. It's just I fear that we may not be the most well equipped for such a task.
She kind of considers for a minute. She says, I think we have to go to the source. I mean, the best way to stop his plans is to put him somewhere where he can have at least a harder time enacting them. A man of his resources, I'm hesitant to say that we could ever fully stop him, but having him under watch here, I think would go a long way.
Well, then I suppose that's what we do.
I mean, it would be a relatively fast procedure, and we have teleportation access to Timberbrook. We could have him arrested within the hour if we decided to move forward on it. And back here, under our watch, it's everything that happens after that that concerns me.
There will almost certainly be some sort of reaction.
Unrest, I imagine, at least from those that are loyal to Faust. And I agree. We've seen evidence, and Tessin kind of looks at Isaac, that he is capable of manipulating the minds and memories of others. There's a very real chance that people could even strike out against the Empire without full control over themselves. But I do think I agree with you. If we can remove Faust Dryden from the equation, that will at least slow down his plans by a great deal. He seems to be the kind of man that keeps too many things too close to his chest. If we remove him from the equation, I suspect a great many of the moving pieces will grind to a halt.
So how do we do this? He's traveling now. I'm sure it wouldn't be too hard to discern where. I don't know that it was a secret trip. It may have been a secret trip. I thought it was diplomatic something or other.
Cass kind of chimes in at this point too. She says, you know, one thing we may have working for us is until the issue is sorted out one way or the other, I'm not sure the Cabal can act one way or the other. If they move to help him and his matter is still unsorted, they'd sort of be outing themselves in the process. Now, they could be working behind the scenes, but I don't know if they could make any formal move against the Empress or against the city itself without putting themselves at risk too. I mean, several of them are quite powerful, but given the weight of an entire continent against them, I don't see how they could hold up. We might have the time to pull this off. And go ahead.
Well, what do you need us to do?
Well, Rezia kind of looks at Isaac at this point. She says, well, you know your father better than anyone here, and have had closer access to him than anyone else. Even if his reputation precedes him, I know next to nothing about his day-to-day life. When is he supposed to return to his house? And what's our best approach? Can we catch him off guard in any way? Does he have a thing he does routinely, or some person that he talks to regularly? Could you be part of the equation? I don't want to put you in risk, but what plays do we have here?
I am more than happy to help, and I would love to be there when you shackle him, believe me. But I'm wondering, my father's power is in his reputation. I don't know if you moved to arrest him that he would do anything but go willingly. At this point, I'm sure he has plans B, C, all the way down for what would happen if this was a turn of events, and I don't think yet he would want to tarnish this reputation that he's built for himself. He's the great war hero, and to act out against the Empress, is there an actual emperor? No, right? Okay.
If there's a male on the throne, yes,
yeah.
but not currently.
That would throw all those years and all that reputation away, and I do think, even with the memory manipulation, many of his followers care about following the great hero. It might be an option, but I don't know how you feel about that.
So you're suggesting we don't arrest him then?
No, arrest him, but
You just don't think you don't think he'll put up a struggle then?
I think if we can catch him at the house before he can go away on some mysterious diplomatic trip, I don't know that he has an option. And if he does outwardly act against the Empress, well, that's kind of a win for us too, isn't it? We've taken away some of his power. He is now a wanted man.
You can see the two of them hesitate. They kind of look at each other and they say, I understand where you're coming from, but I know you mean no insult, but Faust Dryden might be the most magically attuned person on this continent. So if he does decide to lash out at the Empress, that concerns me, because even though she is also quite talented and adept, I don't know if there's any one person in this entire continent who could stop Faust Dryden if it came to it. In a group, in force, with numbers, certainly, but I would... Basically, what I'm saying is I don't want to provoke him too harshly. I don't want to... I agree that the simplest course of action would be to provoke him into doing something that would belie his reputation, to show him for who he is. But if that comes at the expense of the Empress, it's a plan we cannot risk.
And I agree. I didn't necessarily mean that. I'm just saying if he resists arrest, the great war hero is now a criminal, and with that dies a lot of his power. I don't think his next move would be a straight assault on the Empress. I find that highly unlikely, but Tessian, I don't want to speak for the group.
I think your father would have ways of manipulating the message. If he's able to kill all of those who arrive to stop him, he can blame it on a coup or, some sort of divergent group within the empire itself. I think he could spin it any number of ways should he wish to. I think bringing as much force and preparing for as big a fight as possible is the smart move.
I say we do that too. I want to be formal about it, I guess, is where I see the power. The Empress making a sneaky move against a duke in the land can be twisted any number of ways, but a formal arrest based on evidence, if he resists that, it's hard to twist that narrative, and I would be happy to accompany. My father has disappointed me in a many number of ways throughout the years, but he also could have killed me many times up until now, and he hasn't. I think if I go there, it might be extra incentive to stay his hand. It's a gamble, but we're discussing a great many number of gambles, and we just have to decide which one offers us the least risk and the most potential reward.
Well, I think making it formal and official is the right call here, Isaac. I have concerns about how official all of this is. Obviously, the evidence will need to be official, but I don't know that I want word of this getting out. The ship, sure. But the fact that mana cannons of this size are even conceivable is dangerous information. But might be needed in order to make this formal. I don't know.
I think, for what it's worth, I think people of this land are living in a bubble. And they think we've had the Great War and nothing else can go wrong. And I think that's a dangerous mindset, and this might be a wake-up call that they need, if it does indeed get out. I don't know. Grell, you represent a perspective that's unlike Tessian and Lena and myself and even Karash. What do you think?
And I look sheepish in front of these people and everyone, and I had been quiet and intentionally so. And I kind of just almost like kind of shrink into myself at this point, and I just say, these kinds of politics are just not something I've ever been familiar with, though I think I do see the merit in attempting this properly. And I don't really know what your father is capable of, but I think we should try, and I do think we may have to make some sacrifices to do so, and that might mean we let the people know of these plans.
A bird enters the airtight room.
That's what I think. I don't know. But when I'm assessing, let's say we go with a more immediate plan where we sort of ambush him and take him by surprise. If he decides to fight back, then that's no different than if we go the more formal route. We don't give him a big heads up, but we go the formal way, and we hope that he will stay his hand. If he wants to fight back, then no plan we have is really going to matter.
It's true. I mean, after I've said that, I'm kind of like, okay, I have something else to say, I guess. I think realistically, the people of this nation, they know the history. They know the devastation that the Manicannon caused, and I think conceiving of an idea such as the ones that we have laid out here is only going to truly enter the minds of people who are going to do it anyway, or at the very least, they're going to attempt it anyway, something of this nature. I don't know if simply bringing up the idea of these Manicannons are going to suddenly just send the entire nation into disarray, is what I'm trying to say. I don't know if keeping it as the very idea of it a secret is really what we should be focusing on. I do think if that's our concern, I don't think it should be our concern.
You make a fair point, Grail. I suppose there's even some wisdom in us knowing what people may be after, bait and the like. Perhaps something as devastating as this might just be too juicy a treat for those looking to hurt Aramea. Maybe there's some good that could come of letting people know that something this foul exists. What?
Cass, I would like to make a request.
Sure.
I think if we're going to arrest my father, we should, on conspiracy charges, also take in Connor and Alexia. I think it's too easy for his plans to continue if either one of them becomes head of the household. That would leave my younger sister in charge, and I don't think she's been caught up in his tendrils just yet.
She thinks about it and she kind of says, I mean, I'm happy to lock up any Drydens I can if they're connected to it, but it's not really my call to make. And she looks over at Rezia and she says, I suppose there's something to be said for it, but it wouldn't be any remaining person in charge anyways. We would install someone there temporarily until this whole matter was sorted out. So even if you had another sister that remained, she wouldn't look over the city either. That's not to say we shouldn't do it still, but formally we would have someone temporarily watch over the town, a representative assigned from here, to keep tabs on things while we took care of things with Faust in the city here.
As you wish. I just know Kana strives every day to be my father, and Alexia, she might even be sharper than he is. So it might be in our best interest to take all of them in one fell swoop.
But so I agree with you. My short engagement with Connor was not a good one. Under what grounds would we be taking them in, though? I mean, we have evidence in your father's room. We have that, but what do we have with Connor and Alexia?
It's, I think, easy enough to take them in. I don't know if we can keep them there, formally charged, but they're in the same house. I think it's an easy enough charge to just say that they were conspiring with him.
Well, your younger sister was in the same house herself, was she not?
Mm-hmm.
It's true.
She's on a trip with your father.
But she's
right
young.
now.
I could see that coming into play.
And Rezia says, I don't know the family dynamics, but we would probably have to take them all in. It's kind of a package deal, all or nothing.
And now he's conflicted.
Uh-huh. Well, and I do question, I'm worried that with us going in there and retaining this information, we don't know that your father is going to be coming back, right?
I think he will. To the house.
Yeah, right. I mean, he's on this trip with your little sister, and if Connor relays information that something got out, why do you think that he would return to a place that we would know to find him?
Well, it's like I said, there's some things we can't account for, but if we are waiting there, if we make a formal charge, if you make a formal charge, I gesture to Rezia and Cass, and he doesn't come home, then that's evading arrest. That gives us a tool that we can use for our narrative. It's always to the narrative with Isaac, always the story. So I think that's fine in a way. It's not ideal, but I'm trying to propose a situation that we can win no matter what happens. Does that make sense? If I'm crazy, Lena, please let me know. I don't want to speak for this group.
No, Isaac, I don't think you're crazy. I think this is all reasonable so far. I am a little concerned about what comes after all of this. The logistics of keeping them here, what if they escape or have other means of making their plans a reality.
And maybe I'm naive, but if he's on the run, I think that makes it more difficult for him to follow through with his plans, even if just by a hair, than Faust Dryden, the great hero, in power in his home in Timberbrook.
The only reasons I bring any of these things up is because I know from what you've told me how smart that man is, and I wouldn't put it past him to have a trick or two up his sleeve, Isaac. I mean, you know better than any of us, I'd say, but I think we need to prepare for these what-if scenarios. We don't know what we're going to see when we return to that snake's den.
To be frank with you, it's that same reason, him being so tricky and clever, that I don't think he's going to care about being arrested. I think he will find his way out in a way that maybe shines a bad light on the Empress for even making a move against him in the first place. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's going to take him a long time. With that said, I think it still buys us some time to do something else.
Karash, as one touched by the Lord of Conflict and Battle, I would like to hear your input on what to do when faced with a slippery opponent and those who would ally with him. How do we cut off the head of this multi-headed snake, this Hydra, if you will? What's the best way?
Hail Hydra.
Very helpful. If he is going to do something evil and we can catch him, we should catch him. And if someone else does the work for him when he is imprisoned, we cannot help that, but it is better to try than to not try.
So you would suggest we make our move against Faust himself, and then simply let the others make whatever bed they wish to make.
Yes? Why would they make...
I mean, that there is...
Not literal beds. By the way.
There's wisdom to that. I mean, Connor doesn't have the backing your father does, right, Isaac? I mean, I don't know if people would clamor to serve under Connor. He doesn't have the power, the smarts, to be honest. So it's possible that he could just step in the shit himself. Excuse my language. I kind of look at the Empress, and kind of indict himself.
You're absolutely right. Connor's power is truly in his name only. He's a hothead and not particularly adept, and everyone knows it. Alexia, while sharp and capable, doesn't have the clout yet.
Right. So if we're trying to protect your little sister and we're not taking in the whole slew of the Drydens, maybe that's the best option. Just go straight for Faust. Only him.
It's also possible your brother Connor could run and ruin a great many of your father's plans, just right into the ground.
Also
It's
true.
not a bad idea, actually. Well, we've thrown a lot at you, Cass and Rezia. What are your thoughts, Your Grace?
Well, obviously, as I said, I'll have to talk it over with my sister before we decide what to do for sure, but it's good to have these discussions now so I can bring her the full slate of options. I guess I would ask you, Isaac, since you would know better than most, if we only remove Faust, what does that mean for this other sister of yours?
If you only remove... and I forgot... this is terrible. I forgot my youngest sister's name.
Cora.
By the way. And are you asking Alexia or Cora? Because...
I'm asking about Cora. If she returns with your father and we bring him in, and we leave this vacuum behind with Connor there until we can send a representative, even if that doesn't take much time, would your other siblings act out against Cora?
I don't think so. We're a dysfunctional family, but... my father has instilled in them to always put family first. That's family first above everything else, including fealty to the Empress or anything. So I don't think they would do that. And to be honest, it might be good for Cora. She might finally have the option to make a decision for herself. It might be liberating. I hope it is.
Cass kind of chimes in. She says, well, Rezia, we do have at least a handful of people in the Cabal that we can trust. We could arrange so that they're the ones who are sent to do this. And again, it's unlikely the other members would raise a fuss at risk of, outing themselves, essentially. Perhaps we send that select few to collect Faust Dryden and hold him for a bit and put him on trial. And Rezia kind of nods. She says, I concur. I think my sister will be likely to be on board with this, though she, if anyone, is going to be wary of what it means in the long term. But this opportunity is a big one, and I don't think we can afford to let it pass by. We'll have to deal with things as they come, but we'll do what we can to make sure we keep not only the Empress, but everyone as safe as possible. I'm concerned there's going to be collateral damage, but even then, as much as we can try to prevent it, some damage might be worth it to prevent even worse damage down the road.
And I don't mean to be callous with the lives of your soldiers, but if there is collateral damage, then in a way that's a win too. It's not what we want to hear, but it's a better alternative than him killing off a secret ops group in the middle of the night. No one knows the best, and we still lose all of the soldiers. With that said, and to prove that I do value what your soldiers are attempting to do, I would like to volunteer to be part of this force.
Well, Isaac, I think the ultimate decision of that resides with Lena. For all of us. Although I will say that I'm willing to do whatever needs to be done to help bring Dryden in myself. But we did agree to put Lena and the needs of her quest in front of everything else. So I think you do need to have your say, Lena.
And I nod, and I say, Isaac, I know this is something you care about, and if you want to volunteer, I won't stop you. But I think we shouldn't split up. If you're going to volunteer for this to turn in your father, I think we should all go as a group. we stick together, and the Grenadiers can
Opals.
wait.
The pendants.
Yes,
the
I
opals.
do hold the opal. As I say,
TBD, guys. TBD.
Then
we stick together no matter what.
I suppose it comes down to what the Empress wants to do then.
And Rezia nods. She says, I will pass all this on to her, and we'll talk it over. Hopefully within a few hours, as soon as I can get a chance to separate her from anyone else who might be listening. She is often in contact with the leader of the Crusaders, so she may be able to get some additional information as well. And we will send word. If you can stay in town, we'll send word to you, hopefully by the end of the day, on what the next course of action will be.
Tessia nods. Well, you'll find us at the the Witch's Cauldron, and we've got rooms there for the next the next day,
2
2 days,
2 days.
for the next 2 days.
Shouldn't we wait until dark to leave? We were supposed to have been arrested.
And Rezia kind of nods. She says, well, when Cass told me about that element of it, I do have something that you could do for me as a favor as we set all this in motion. It will seem trifling in comparison to what else is going on right now, but it would also free up Cass to assist me in these preparations instead of doing this herself.
Well, I'm sure we'd love to assist in any way. What is it exactly you'd need us to do, though?
And she kind of looks in Cass's direction, and Cass nods and stands up from her chair to address the group. She says, we've been hearing reports that people in the residential quarter have been being kidnapped over the last couple of days by some unseen assailant. And I've had the Crimson Reserve look into it a bit, as we've heard multiple reports have been coming in. It was just one at first, which could be anything, but there was a couple more 2 days ago. If you can be looking into that, I can assist Rezia in trying to get the Empress on board with this as quickly as possible. And, as an added bonus, it would also sort of serve to clear your names, even though you're not going to be charged. We'll be releasing you without finding, but it gives us an excuse to work in conjunction in the future because you've done a good deed for the city.
I mean, Lena, it's up to you, but the best case, worst case scenario, we're helping to free up their time. Best case, maybe this is somehow connected to recruiting more slaves for my father. I mean, there's no way to know, but
I had the
I'm
same
open.
thought as well. I think we should look into it. The fact that there's kidnappings in what is considered the Empire's stronghold, the capital of the continent, is a little worrying. So I think we should look into it, and I would be happy to. I think our group would as well.
Cass says, all right, I will send one of my best guardsmen to the Witch's Cauldron to give you as much information as he has, and you can act accordingly. Hey, again, and even if you can just check into it, maybe it's nothing, or maybe there's more to it, but you can't act on it, that's fine. Just the ability to look into it will help free me up today to assist here as I can.
Yes.
If that's agreeable, since we're at the timeline here, we'll sort of fast forward to the point of they make sure you have no other questions.
I think we're good. I guess Hessian would say, if there's anything that you have that would help us, obviously, let us know. But yeah, information and a task at hand, and keep us informed.
Rezia says, we might actually have something for you, but it'll depend on how favorable the Empress is about this plan. Again, I expect she'll be on board, but we'll work on that. There may be something that we can do to help.
I have a question, and I point to the plans that are still on the table, and I say, we've been holding on to these for the time being, but if you need these plans as evidence in the arrest of Faust Dryden, or if you need these even to prove what is going on to your sister, what would you like us to do with these plans, essentially, is what I'm getting at.
Rezia kind of shakes her head. She says, my temptation was to burn the mana cannon one the moment I saw it, but First of all, we need it as evidence, and second of all, you're right. I don't know if getting out is the worst thing, although I'd like to avoid it if possible. That said, I think I would prefer to hang on to it myself, though you are the ones who discovered it, so it's ultimately your call. I'm not looking to overrule you on this one.
I look to the group.
I can see pros and cons for both, so...
Tessian's like, at the end of the day, it makes us a target. I do feel safer with it in a more neutral location, but I also think that it's going to be necessary to get any kind of momentum done here. Its mere existence is almost too much to believe, which is why physical evidence is needed. If we have it with us, they can't just prove that your father's been doing all this. It'll just be hearsay, and it's going to be hard to believe that anyone would think to build one of this, much less have made any actual progress.
Grail, I know we have been on both sides of this issue in the past, but I do think we need to... Or Tessian, you both draw, right? Yeah, of course. It might be worth making a sketch, or at least taking note of the construction. It may help us down the line with determining a weak point or something that can help us beyond just serving as evidence.
You're saying we duplicate this?
As an option, duplicate it, or at least take notes. Maybe they are encoded to only mean something to us, but gives us vital information we may not even know we need yet.
I was trying to make a copy of it earlier, and then I was told not to. So,
you have? Did you make a copy of the one?
Yes.
Just the ship, because I tried, and you, Tessian, actually stopped me.
And that's what I was saying. Like, we've kind of we've been on both sides, but I'm wondering if I guess I'll just say my fear of this falling into the wrong hands is not high. While it's powerful knowledge, there's not many people on this continent who could look to duplicate it, even if they wish to. Either with the magical attunement, the wealth, there's a lot of different elements at play. I'm not so worried, but I want to hear what Lena and Tessian think. And Karash, if you have an opinion, by all means.
I think duplicating it is wise. And actually, I have a question for Chris. How common is Draconic, the language?
Pretty uncommon.
Pretty uncommon. Okay, so I'll say I think duplicating it is wise, and just to be safe, I could transcribe it in Draconic or another uncommon language, so that if these plans are discovered, they can't easily be read. I could do something like that if that's something we would like to possibly do.
I say might as well.
Gosh,
it would be a small hurdle for someone to cross, but a hurdle nonetheless.
I think I know Primordial, so that's an option as well.
Oh,
Yeah, we can find out what the least common language is and do that.
Yeah, don't worry about that right now.
Common.
If we are concerned that another person may find it and use it, you should break it up into pieces, and we can each hold part of it. And that way, unless we are all captured, no one will ever have all of it again.
The true friendship bracelet.
Yeah. We can actually fold it up and slide it in the pendant. Because that's how that works.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, with our powers combined, we make a weapon of mass destruction.
Yeah, exactly.
Go planet!
Planet is dead.
Captain Destroy Planet.
So they wind down the conversation. Cass gives you kind of an offhand remark, Tessian, about how it was good to see you again, and she wishes someone was under better circumstances.
Yeah, agreed.
The Empress's sister is rather formal, about being appreciative of what you've done to this point and your help going forward. They send you on your way back to the Witch's Cauldron. Then again, sending word later once she's had a chance to talk to the Empress. And we can tidy up some stuff in between if necessary, but for now that's where we'll leave off. Next time you guys will have a bit of the afternoon to get some things done if you need to, or just to hang out and chill at the place.
So I think we'll we're taking the plans, and I think we'll agree to have Grail make a duplicate of it for our benefit. Yeah.
Okay.
So we can get the plans to them after we're done.
Yeah, if
duplicating
there's
it.
any concern there from the Empress and she wants to see them with her own eyes, sure. But I think us holding on to them is probably for the best, especially because I don't think it's...
And
worth this-
Rezia was not going to risk taking the documents to the Empress herself, even if she can get her
No.
secluded. She was going to
Okay.
tell her about them, but not try and bring the tangible documents. So
Yeah.
she does not have a problem with you doing that, although she warns you to be careful.
Okay.
They are going back in the bag of holding for the time being.
Okay, second you step out, she talks to the guards to make sure that you guys are released on your own recognizance. There was just a little bit of a bar fight, but they straightened it out, nothing major. And then we'll go over what's next to come with this potential investigation and some other stuff, and then this bigger thing that might be happening down the road next time on the Anachroschism.